Shana Tova. This has certainly been a year of many losses. Beyond the international and national tragedies, our community has lost a fair number of our dear members. Many of us experienced personal losses as well. I wanted to take this opportunity to tell you about one of my personal losses, a man I only knew for a short period of time before he was unfortunately killed in a car accident in Seneca Falls last year. His life story, however, is definitely worth sharing. Rabbi-Cantor Michael Weisser moved to Elmira just as I was beginning my last year at the congregation. He wanted to move closer to where one of his children lived and was attracted to both the beautiful scenery of the Finger Lakes and the lower cost of living that allowed for a comfortable retirement. Michael, who insisted that I never address him as rabbi or cantor, even from the bima, I came back from retirement twice already and I have no intention of doing it again, started coming to Friday night services at the synagogue and immediately took a liking to the community. We became friends very quickly and spent a good deal of time together, both in my office and in a local Thai restaurant that he loved. We spoke about congregational life, about liturgy, shared acquaintances, and our mutual love of Jewish music. He had the opportunity to study with some of the great cantors of the 20th century, and I was happy to hear his many stories about them. He also berated me for leaving Elmira just as he moved into town. Michael was a complicated man, and many times he candidly shared that there were pretty dark parts in his past. There was only one thing he absolutely refused to talk about. Enough with the story. I'm sick of talking about it. It was an episode that happened in the early 1990s while he served as the spiritual leader of the Reformed Temple in Lincoln, Nebraska. An episode that earned him his 15 minutes of fame. Rabbi Weisser accepted the position in 1991 and moved to Lincoln with his wife and 3 of their 5 children. They were not even fully unpacked yet when the phone rang, and an anonymous caller said, "You're gonna be sorry you moved in, Jew boy," before promptly hanging up. A few days later, the family received a package in the mail that contained racist and anti-Semitic material, along with a business card that read, "The KKK is watching you, scum." Naturally, Michael called the police, who were not surprised. Nebraska was home to a KKK chapter headed by a man named Larry Trapp, a 42-year-old man who lost both his legs to advanced diabetes at a young age. Trapp lived in a cramped Lincoln apartment where he kept his Ku Klux Klan robe, pro-Hitler pamphlets, and a sizable collection of guns which he kept loaded. In a 1992 interview with Time magazine, Trapp revealed that he wanted to scare Weisser into moving out of Lincoln. As the state leader, the Grand Dragon, I did more than my share of work because I wanted to build up the state of Nebraska into a state as hateful as North Carolina and Florida, he said. I spent a lot of money and went out of my way to instill fear. Now, this is where the story takes an interesting turn. Most of us, I believe, would take this kind of welcome to a new town as a sign that this move may not have been the wisest decision. If I were in this situation, I imagine that an order of protection would have been my next logical step. Michael, however, took a very different approach. He got a hold of Trapp's phone number and began calling him every Thursday at 3 o'clock, leaving messages on his answering machine. I would say things like, "Larry, there's a lot of love out there. You're not getting any of it. Don't you want some?" And hang up, Michael told the New York Times in a 2009 interview. And, "Larry, why do you love the Nazis so much? They would have killed you first because you're disabled." And hang up. I did it once a week. One day, Trapp has had enough of the rabbi's messages, answered the phone, screamed a healthy dose of profanities, and asked Michael what he actually wanted. Michael's then wife, Julie, suggested that if Trapp ever answered, he should offer to do something nice for him, and Michael took her advice. He told Trapp that he heard that he was disabled and offered him a ride to the grocery store. Trapp answered that he's all set and told Michael to stop calling. He didn't. Michael kept calling Trapp every Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and kept leaving lovely messages on his answering machine. Then one day, Weisser's phone rang. "Is this the rabbi?" Weisser confirmed that it was, and shockingly, Trapp responded by saying, "I want to get out of what I'm doing, and I don't know how." Weisser decided, despite his family's protest, to go and visit Trapp at his house that night, not before calling a friend and telling him to contact the police if he did not call by midnight. Trapp opened the door while sitting in his wheelchair with 3 loaded guns in his lap. Michael was starting to think that this was a big mistake. However, then, Trapp reached out his hand, introduced himself, and burst into tears. The visit lasted 3 hours, during which Weisser learned that Trapp suffered from severe emotional and physical abuse as a child. His father would beat him up frequently, and Trapp would hide for hours at a time to avoid him. To Weisser, it became clear that Trapp's hatred was deeply rooted in the abuse he had to endure as a child. Over the next year, Trapp became a fixture in the community. He renounced the clan and spent his time speaking to many different groups about his past and trying to make amends. Around the same time, his health began to deteriorate significantly. To everyone's surprise, the Weissers invited Trapp to come live in their home, where they essentially provided him with hospice care until his death 1 year later. While living with the Weissers, Trapp converted to Judaism. His funeral was held at a synagogue that was packed with people, many of them belonging to the different groups that Trapp targeted in his previous life. The story later inspired a 1995 book by Catherine Watterson called How the Love of a Cantor and His Family Transformed a Klansman. People were taken by the idea that an act of kindness can make a change, Rabbi Weisser said. The truth is, human nature is good, not bad. The story is wonderfully inspiring, but is it really that simple? Are humans really, really inherently good? Is there good behind every evil? I'm not so sure. I'm also not sure if Weisser was brave for showing up at Trapp's house or he was criminally responsible. Maybe he was just insane. I don't know if there's a definitive answer. At any rate, even if we can understand what is behind a person being so hateful, a reason is not an excuse. People are always responsible for their own actions. And the fact of the matter is that many people who went through major hardships grew to be wonderful, kind human beings. What I do think we can learn from the story is that oftentimes we give up on people too easily. Too frequently we decide that there is no use talking to people who we consider beyond the pale. It can be due to their actions, their politics, religious affiliation, because they personally hurt us in the past, or simply because we don't like them. How many of us actually lost friends or severed relationships with family members this past year? My bet is in most of us. We tend to tell ourselves that there's nothing to talk about and that we should not waste our time and energy on someone that will never listen. We have every right to do so. We can decide who we want to have in our lives, and sometimes it is perfectly fine to decide to move on from certain people. However, try and think about the last time you decided that there is no point in talking to someone. Chances are that whatever they did, whatever beef you have with them, they were not a KKK Grand Dragon. Maybe there's no need to leave them a love-filled message every Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but maybe, just maybe, they deserve a second chance. Maybe we do as well. Shana Tova.